know what? I thought I would talk a little bit about organized religion, specifically the religion that I was raised in, that is Christianity. The whole scope of what I've seen of organized Christianity can be compared to like a classroom of elementary school kids. And, speaking of elementary, it never fails that I always run across Christians who claim I'm still a babe in Christ or I'm just a babe in Christ. And these are people that have been in the church for like decades. I mean, seriously. But back to the original point. Imagine a classroom, let's say with about 40 or 50 students, kids at the kindergarten level. Well, that's about 5 or 6 years old. And the teacher is trying to teach them the lesson. And the teacher will ask a question. Let's say the teacher asks one or two questions of the class. And you know how it goes in these schools. They have to raise their hand, me, is to get the privilege to give the answer. And so now the teacher is forced, depending on how many questions she asks, and she's not going to ask 40 or 50 questions, usually one or two. She has to pick and choose who gets to answer the question. And this whole thing about the elect of God choosing who gets to excel to the next level, nobody truly considers that. But anyway, so the teacher has to pick one out of 40 or 50 students to answer the question. How's she going to know who to pick? Or how is he going to know who to pick? Well, if it's a real teacher, they kind of understand what the students are about, their intellects and their intelligence level, their ability to focus and not be dumb and disruptive. So they kind of know who to pick. But it's interesting. It gets a little deeper because, okay, imagine that scenario, right? But imagine the teacher also being at the same age, the same level as all those other kindergarten level students. Imagine the teacher himself or herself being one of those 5 or 6 year olds that really don't understand what's going on. Not only that, they ain't gonna even know who to pick. They'll just pick somebody at random to answer a question that probably won't make sense from the get-go because it's a kid asking a question and trying to teach the lesson. And it's really like that. And the reason why that is, I've always said that the Bible is written in inverted fashion. I've always said that. I'll always believe that, and I have my reasons. And one of the reasons is the very fact that the churches are so evil and disruptive. Look how the people act. Don't they act like a unruly classroom of kids just going around in romper room fashion, not really understanding or knowing what's going on? I mean, think about it. Look at it. How can true collective understanding result into what the church has become in this day and age? And one of the things that they have backwards is this thing about needing an intercessor. An intercessor. The only intercessor anybody needs is not a man that's going to float down from the sky, magically lift you up. You float up into the air, into the clouds, and you're watching other people. Like, hey, see y'all later. Sorry you didn't make it. Nah, that's not it. Come on, really? But that's how it's being taught. It's being taught in an elementary fashion. The truth that the Bible contains. The Bible is a book of truth, spiritual, psychological truth, and there is history there too. But history isn't the intended purpose of the Bible. The intended purpose of the Bible, if you read in chronological order, it shows you how man descended into darkness and how he is supposed to rise back up out of darkness, spiritually speaking. That's what it's showing you. Not many people are getting it. And again, this whole thing about the intercessor, it's backwards. Like, for instance, in the beginning, in the book of Genesis, because of a certain act, an unnatural act, which is what being disobedient to God is. It's to behave unnaturally in accordance to nature, to behave and to think unnaturally in accordance to natural laws and universal laws. That's what being disobedient is. So the book of Genesis is talking about how man became, symbolically, that is, it's symbolically talking about how man became disobedient in the first place. And then you got the progressive journey that's expressed from Adam onto his descendants, all the way into the culmination of the Messiah and his ultimate re-entrance into the light. What did the Messiah do? First of all, what did Adam did? What did Adam do? He and his wife Eve, they hid themselves, it says in the Bible, among the trees in the garden. And they covered themselves with leaves and made aprons of the brush and whatnot. They covered themselves. But that's not a physical happenstance. That's not something literal. Like, oh, there's God over here across the street standing by this green SUV in front of my house. And there's a tree in my front yard. Let me hide behind this tree so God can't see me. But a lot of people think that's what it means. No, that's not what it means. All that means is that you created, what it means is that you created for yourself a veil, an internal veil, a psychological veil that covered your spiritual light. And now you relate to the world by way of your thought processes in an unnatural manner. And that renders you weak and helpless, not able to harness the laws of the universe to manifest naturally, to naturally relate to your fellow human being. Everybody's anxious, filled with anxiety, social awkwardness, because we covered ourselves spiritually with a psychological veil. And that veil culminated into what we now call our personal self-images, our ego. So the whole thing about the intercessor, if you consider something very interesting about the human ego, it always projects its own negativity upon the world. It always projects its crap onto the world. It can never see itself at fault. The ego is that unnatural thing within that veils the human spirit from connecting to the universe. It's the ego. And the ego also causes to act unnatural to God. To think unnatural means to act and think in inverted fashion. in reverse fashion. Hence, the ego thinks that an intercessor is something physical, like a man coming afloat from the sky, redeem it, lift it up, it floats back into the sky, looking at all the other egos down on the planet Earth, saying, "See you later, suckers. I told y'all should have listened to me." Nah, it's not it. It's not it. What Adam did, what Eve did, you have to undo. You just have to unhide yourself. Spiritually, you have to unhide yourself through a process of ego dissolution. And unfortunately, this is one thing people don't want to do. They are what? They believe that their egos, they've been dealing with their egos. They've been living underneath the veil of egotism for so long that it's become a substitute for the spirit. The spirit in most people have been dormant for so long that they don't even know it exists. All they have is their ego. And their ego governs them and leads them to a place of spiritual ruin. So, the whole backwards teaching about an intercessor, all that means, if you want to really flip the teaching right side up of what it means to receive salvation and reignite your spiritual light, so when the time comes you actually do ascend to a greater level of life, you have to unveil your spirit. And the way to do that is you got to get rid of all these nonsensical false ideas about who and what you are. And that's what veils you. False ideas about your spirit. You take a false idea and then you believe in that idea. Now you have a false god set up in your mind. A graven image that Moses warned us against setting up in the first place. In the book of Exodus chapter 20, you read verse 1 through 5, Moses warned about the graven image. And at a deeper spiritual level, this is exactly what he was talking about. And the journey of the Messiah is to show you how to remove that graven image that's in your head, that's veiling your spirit, keeping you disconnected from nature, from the earth, from the universe, from God. So, the human ego, being the mechanism of false, stubborn pride, refuses to let go. And you'll have quite a struggle with the human ego if you're trying to battle it head on. You'll have to combat your ego with truth. You'll have to combat your ego by first coming to an understanding that it's not your real spirit. It's something you created. You created your own self-image, and you may have been encouraged by the rest of the world to do so, but yet and still you did it. And to believe in it, that makes it come alive. Like when God says, when the book of Genesis said God breathed the breath of life into Adam. What did God do? Yeah, we're breathing naturally. Oxygen, air, what have you. Yeah. But when he breathed the breath of life into Adam, that's also basically saying he believed Adam into liveliness or animation. Because God believed in Adam and that he should have life, believed in the life of Adam, Adam became alive. A being capable of perception, reasoning, able to think, to compare, and the most important thing, Adam was able to believe himself. Like if you look at other animals walking around on planet Earth, whether they're on the land or sea, when it comes to believing, they have like instinctual knowings. You know, like an ant knows by instinct to build his mound, correspond with the queen, keep feeding the queen, do what they do for the survival of the mound. They already know instinctively what to do. Dogs, cats, squirrels, they have instinctual knowings, but as far as the ability to believe, especially in abstract concepts or greater levels of existence, not so sure about that. But Adam had that ability. So what did he do? He created a concept of himself. He started comparing himself to other things, and he started seeing that he was separate from the whole machine of Earth with all the animals and trees. Oh, he saw himself as being separate. And the whole thing was like one big colossal wonder. And then, that anxiety sets in. And because he had the ability to reason, he's like, well, something greater than myself set all of this up. And that something greater terrified him. Of course, he was separated. So that's how he became hidden. That sense of separation. Separated from nature, separated from the universe, he lost his naturalness. And hence the origin of evil. And now the veil, the spiritual veil, he's now hidden. We have to unhide ourselves. And again, if you really consider all the exploits and journeys of the Israelites up until the culmination of the Messiah ascending into heaven, the Bible is basically trying to show you how to unhide yourself and reconnect. And again, I believe that there are greater levels of existence beyond this earthly plane, just like it says in the Bible. But I also believe you have to reconnect before you're allowed to ascend to those greater levels. And that's what it's all about. You have to unhide yourself. You have to unveil your spirit. And it means to be humble and get rid of all the dumb ideas you believed in about yourself that are now your source of torment and terror. The source of all your fear and anxiety is because you believe in a false image of yourself. And the fact that you believe in a false image of yourself, that's why people go out and worship false gods. A false image needs a false god to worship. And that's why you glorify and idealize other people. Some people glorify and idealize animals. I mean, that's just because they have first glorified by believing in a false self-image that they've substituted in place of their real spirit essence. So it can be done. It takes some work, but it can be done. And hold on for a second. I have a book It'll show you how to unhide yourself. The Power of Spiritology by Dario Thomas. It's on sale at Amazon.com. It can show you some simple but precise ways of how you're hidden and how to unhide yourself. And that's God. That's what God's doing anyway, waiting on you to come out from underneath those trees, to take off those fig leaves and bushes and those aprons made of brush, to come as you are, as you were originally made. And in doing so, you will be lifted up. No more tears, no more gnashing of teeth, perpetual joy, and the peace that surpasses all understanding can be yours. But you got to understand what the Bible is talking about if you want the Bible to be your source for spiritual upliftment. You got to understand what it's talking about. And remove yourself from those elementary school classes. Understand whether or not your teacher is an elementary school student. Understand that. Anyway, thank you for listening. Subscribe to the Spiritology Television Network on YouTube. If you know somebody that can benefit from these talks and lessons, urge them to subscribe. And again, get the book, The Power of Spiritology. Show it to you again. By Dario Thomas. On sale at Amazon.com. Check it out. You'll love it. Guarantee it. Take care. God bless.